and welcome to High Spirits, where we're exploring the energy around us. I am joined today by my friend and guest, author and facilitator of mindfulness, Angela Silva Mendes. Welcome, Angela.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. And her book, Getting There by Being Here, Life's Invitations to Dance, is part of what we're going to be discussing in this episode and the one that follows. So welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for being brave enough to join me when you probably didn't really know what we were what this would be like. So you're a brave woman. I appreciate that.
Accepting life's invitations.
There it is. There it is. Without even fully knowing what you're accepting, you showed up. So thank you. Today, the aspect of energy that I wanted to discuss is the energy of intention and even completion, and the fact that you were able to complete this novel, which is one thing I definitely want to talk about.
Okay.
But first, I would love to know a little bit about who you are and what your life story was in terms of bringing you to the place where you're able to share this knowledge with others. So I know a little of your history, and it's quite a good, interesting story, different than a lot of the people that are in this area. So I think it's lovely to hear it if you're up for sharing.
Thank you. I often say that for me, it's important to say that it is life's invitations to dance, because it has been how life has been treating me. You know, I am a life coach. I still function under the umbrella of coaching. I have the certificate. And yet whatever coaching taught me was to plan my life in detail, in specifics. It has to be measured. It has to be specific. And I did that for the longest time, and life kept changing, right? Things happen and life takes me somewhere. And I always blame myself until I realized that actually life kind of knows better what is for me. And that's the invitation for me. It's this, yes, I am getting there. Actually, I think I got way further than if I could specifically design the plan to follow and to accomplish. I would never imagine in 1,000 years that I would be able to write a book. It wasn't my background. I never thought I was a writer. I never thought I was capable. I wasn't that great in school. So it was that pressure that you need to know a lot before you write a book. And yes, there's a lot involved, but it was because through life and life's invitations, I kept coming back here into who I am, what does that mean, and how to leave the changes that happen. I went through a lot of changes. So I was born in Angola, Africa, in a coffee plantation. So it wasn't that I was exposed to any of this. I think I was 6 by the time we had TV. So it wasn't...
It wasn't a common topic.
And that wasn't part of my upbringing.
So energy, that sort of stuff. How would you define what you mean by it wasn't common?
Energy and the work that I do.
Okay.
Working in this way and doing what I do, that wasn't my upbringing.
So you didn't see others doing that. It wasn't something
role models around that.
Mm-hmm. What was life like?
Growing up? Mm-hmm. Oh gosh, I would play out in the coffee field because the coffee would be drying. That was my favorite thing, we have to spread the coffee. Of course, it's spread with people or sometimes a tractor. And that was my favorite thing to do. But we played outside. I was always outside. Of course, then the war started, and my father sent us to his country, Europe and Portugal, and just my mother and my sisters. So this was my first kind of being uprooted out of my community, out of my life.
Big change.
Big change. Yeah. My father died after. It took a lot to adjusting, but it started the questioning, what is this? What is life? I was brought up a Catholic, so there was a lot of priests around me. My mother's extremely religious Catholic, so there was a lot of answers, but no answers really connected with me. Not as an 8-year-old, those answers didn't meet my needs. And that got me into a very curious journey.
I can relate.
Yeah.
I think that's right around when I started to really question and wonder about the things I was being raised with. Like something was missing. It wasn't that I was rejecting the constructs, but I needed something else. And it seemed like a piece that I was still seeking for.
And for me, it was a piece of how could I embrace at that time the pain of the loss without no support for what was real here, right? And I understood that my father had died, but I couldn't understand, how do I stay with the pain? How do I live the loss with all the transitions that were happening in my life? I think that's where actually life started kind of saying, there's more to life than whatever people expected of me, or I believed it was my role. But I think I continued on the train track, following what I was supposed to follow and doing what I was supposed to do. I did my undergrad in early childhood education, which I loved. But again, another move. And
where was that?
So when I finished, this was in Portugal. When I finished, I worked there for a couple of years, and then I fell in love. And my husband, now husband, at the time, he was doing his PhD in Wales.
Oh, very nice.
So I moved to Wales,
wow,
which was interesting. Another uprooted, no family, no friends, no connection, and starting again. And it was very difficult. I did work with children when I was there, but culture is an important part of this being here. But I went back to study. And I studied psychology when I was there. I studied English because my English wasn't up to grasp. But all this to say that life kept inviting me to come back to this place that I believe it is what I call now my self-print. We are so unique. We are the same. We're so connected. But at the same time, we are this individual, very specific to ourselves, just like our fingerprints. And I think we have an inner self-print that is just mine. And my self-print keeps asking me stuff.
Like what?
Like what? Like, be myself, be truthful, be honest, be real. And that is the invitation of what I believe is mine, a combination of everything that happened to me, of who I am here, it's very unique to me. It's not a recipe I can share with people. So it took a while for me to trust that, listen to that, honor that there's more to it, a lot of therapy, a lot of coaches, a lot of reading, a lot of trainings, like how we met. There's a lot of exploring in how many ways these facets of me, these layers of me are here, and how to honor that. So that is, for me, my dance. I call it a dance because I refuse to call life a journey. I know it is. My gray hair, my wrinkles have a linear process that is linear and true. That could be in a journey. But my inner life, my emotional life, my mental life is definitely not linear. I sometimes wake up and I'm 105. Other times I wake up and I'm 3. So
that's interesting, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's funny because it has to do with energy, the way you feel that day, or your surroundings, or the amount of sleep you got, how much energy you have can make you feel more youthful. And that's pretty interesting. It's true. It's all relative. Yeah.
And it's part of my work now, not making me wrong for being human and having that energy that is conditioned around so many things, sleep and health and nutrition. But if it flows, how can I respect it and work with it in a way that is real for me, not abusive. I know how to do that very well.
Many of us do, yes.
But in a way that actually brings what I believe my self-print is asking of me in this world. I believe I came here for a reason. I believe there's something for me to do here. My head wants to know what, wants the full plan, the roadmap, the full directions, the guarantees, the insurance that I am going to get there.
Right.
And my life has been proving to me that I cannot know the whole road, just like when I drive. I cannot see, even if I use the GPS, I cannot see the whole trajectory. I have to work from here. I have to brake when it's needed, fulfill all the driving requirements. I have to pay attention to traffic and people. So it's from here that I get there. And sometimes stuff happens.
How would you say you build that faith? In knowing that, what things happen in life. I know one example for me would be, when you start to see positive things and actually a pattern of that gave me some faith. Things had been so hard, and then I still saw life that way, and eventually had to go, well, there's a lot of things that aren't hard, so let's focus on that. Or, so what kind of things does anything come to mind that helped you build faith in yourself or in your intuition or?
I would have to say that what helped me, my faith and intuition, was actually research and studying.
Yes.
Because it's understanding my own inner system, my own nervous system, my own mind, to the level that I can understand, that I can actually trust that I'm always scanning for the negative, for survival reasons. And then that gives me room to do what you say. It's like, okay, then it's my practice. It is my responsibility to focus on the other things, because then it's up to me to build what I call an emotional library, to kind of collect and put on my library things that I want to have. If I have a library of information and I have books, and I have, nowadays everything's electronic, but I do have a library of books. If I have a bunch of books for factual information, where's my emotional library? Where's my collection of moments that reinforce that life has actually been there for me, that things don't work against me? And of course, there are things that are painful, and there are things that are absolutely impossible to tolerate. But when I look back and I realize there is a place for things, and I'm talking about myself, I'm not saying this is the experience of everyone. By no means. I've worked with violence against women's issues. I've worked with refugees. And actually, I tell a story of someone I volunteered with, and it is important to know there are facts that go beyond my own control and my own ability to practice or put things together or make things happen. There are factual life circumstances. But I think even those people that I've worked with, especially refugees, it was such a lesson for me, because there's that faith. There's the being here as the only power that exists. It's the only thing I have control over, is this moment here in me, not the circumstances, not what's happening with me, but how do I respond and how do I do after. And that is energy for me, because it is knowing my own inner world, knowing the information I have in my head, but knowing that my emotions are fluid, knowing that my sensations are a combination of reactions from everything from past to future projections and expectations. That for me is the dance, is being in that rhythm of what's playing and knowing what's possible for me. How is it possible for me to dance?
That's a really good perspective to have on, because we don't always know when challenging times are going to be helping us. You know, that perspective is generally, this is so difficult, this horrible thing's happening to me, instead of, oh, with a curious mind, oh, well, I guess I'll see where this ends up. You know, it's kind of out of my hands anyway. And that trust can keep your anxiety down at a minimum, you know, being a little bit in touch with the idea that there is if you do believe that you do have a calling or there is a plan for you, it gives you some of sort of an inner peace, I think.
I believe that, you know, the regulating our nervous system is our responsibility. And of course, depending on our backgrounds, some people have it easier. If you grew up in a safe space, structural family environment, finances, if you know that in your body, it's easier to find the highway there. But if that's not part of your upbringing, then it's harder. You have to do that on your own. You have to rebuild that with yourself, within yourself. And that's part of my work. I mean, we all need help at some point in our lives. And I think it's important to ask for help.
Yeah.
And it is possible, even if the dance looks different, right? If you come from a family of dances and you grew up dancing, it's going to come out naturally because it's part of your upbringing. But if you've never seen anyone dancing, if you never heard music in your life, it's probably going to take a while for the body to adjust to the movements. And yes, we can learn. I think we can learn literally anything.
I agree. I think this topic of energy itself and the show itself, the intent is to acknowledge how common and the shared experience that many of us have, and things that we may attribute to something else, but really, you know, once we kind of have a larger understanding of our inner world and the outer world and what's happening where, it can give us a lot of guidance and clarity, make decision-making easier, you know, if you have faith that you're on a path to something that benefits everyone, that's a nice feeling. You don't worry as much if you feel protected and led, you know.
And in a way, I think the practice, especially for me, mindfulness brings the connection of who I am, what I am, and I believe I'm energy. I don't believe, I mean, physicists say that, right? That everything goes down to energy. So if that is my nature, then everything that I do is to come back home into that vibration, that energy. And if that is my practice, then the more I'm reminded of that, the more at home I feel. But that's a practice because my body does not know that. My body has a nervous system that tells me to be in high alert.
And it's remembering all these things from childhood and danger, and triggers and echoes of those things that are imprinted, right?
Yeah. So for me, working with energy is the practice. Actually, my business, the word that I use is from Kimbundu, one of the most spoken languages in Angola, which was my grandmother's language. And it means energy. Oh. And I often look back and I reflect, and I didn't know why I was choosing this word. I wanted a word that would represent my past, my future, and my present. So I picked past, the language which I use.
Your origin,
my
language of origin.
My present, because that's who I am, that's what I am, and my future in this sense of once I am remembered, once I remember who I am, then I am one with all the energy there is, because I go back to that that unity, that connection with universe, which is part of my logo. I have an 8 intertwined with the infinity sign as a symbol of that energy flowing 8 is my human body. It's the dance that I do between this existing in this form. But when I do that in practice, in awareness that I am not just my nervous system, that I know things, that I can connect, then I get reminded that, oh, I'm part of a bigger thing. I'm not this separate, right? So if I practice that with you, for example, if I look at you and I connect, it's like, no, Christine is blonde, I'm not. Christine is from here, I'm not. Then I create
Negative
separation,
right.
and I start protecting myself from you, as opposed to when I'm reminded that we are the same. We are totally different at so many levels. But when I look at you and recognize that, yeah, there's an energy there beyond the interests that we share and what we've already shared, then I start finding the commonalities. But I have to practice.
Now, talk about practice, the term, when you use that. What do you mean by practice?
So for me, there's two kinds of practice. There's the formal practice. I practice mindfulness. I might sit on a meditation cushion and meditate. I might practice dance. I might practice yoga. I might practice Qigong, Tai Chi. All those are formal practices. And then there's an informal, which is the one that really connects with me. And my informal practice is much more an inner check-in, this awareness, this coming back and noticing. And I have a list of my method. And I start with turning towards myself. So if I turn towards myself, I recognize something, of course, that has to be the first acceptance. And then if I turn to myself, that I can do anywhere. I don't have to be on a meditation cushion. I don't have to be going through a formal exercise. I do conscious stream writing. I write a lot because I feel like I download what's in my head.
Is that what you mean by turn to myself? Turn your thoughts to your own inner experience? Paying attention to yourself?
Paying attention. And then separating the physical aspect of it, the sensations, what's really here without words, to the emotions, that everything's connected, it's all one, but it helps that I separate the sensation from the emotion, from the thought.
I've had to work
and practice.
Yes, I can relate to that as well. Yeah. Even just recognizing when you go places or you're with certain people or you're in certain environments, turning to yourself and seeing how different you feel physically. And then it's like a little game. How come? Why do I feel this way? Is it me? Is it the room? Is it that person? And that's kind of what I do with it. It's like, ooh, I feel nervous all of a sudden. I'm not nervous. Who's nervous? I feel nervous, and then I look around and examine, and it's kind of a fun practice.
Yeah.
But you can be running around and talking to people while you're doing it. So it's not, like you say, the formal practice. You're not quieted, you're not, eyes closed, focused, etc.
Yeah.
But so the day-to-day kind of overall intention can be part of an informal practice, if I understand you correctly.
Absolutely. And for me, it's important to set intentions, and I don't set intentions on an external way. So my intention is not on a material form. It doesn't have a format. But my intention is energy, much more. It's much more emotional. It's much more sensation. Because when I connect with that, it's as if I wrote my address on my GPS, right? I might get lost, but the GPS will reroute me because the intention is there. I always tell this. I used to ask everyone first thing in the morning, what is your intention? And I was taking my niece to school, and I asked her what was her intention, and she told me, today my intention is not to have an intention.
Well, focus on that and it will happen, right?
Yeah, but it's not for everyone, and I've learned to not ask. But it is this, how do you want to feel at the end of the day?
Right. Goal setting, even just for your own emotional regulation.
In a way that
and protection as well.
In a way that it's just connecting you to my self-print and my practice.
And being true to that, being able to say no if you want to say no, if you're, honoring yourself, honoring your feelings, all of that.
Yeah.
And I'm lucky we have another episode with you today. This one's going to wrap up actually before we get to the next recording. I wanted to also mention that you're able to be hired by people, and you have a site that they can find you. Can you share that with us?
It's www.upanji.com.
So
Upanji, UPANJI.com.
Yes. And you live right here in the Farmington Valley, so we're very lucky to have you, and very lucky that you shared your way of being and seeing with us today. And we can't wait to get into a little more about mindfulness and your lovely book that you wrote in our next episode. So thank you.
Thank you.
Wonderful having you. So we will return with Angela on High Spirits, exploring the energy around us. Stay tuned.
Nick Augustino right here at the East Side Restaurant. We always have the complete full dinner menu. Knockwurst, bratwurst, sauerbraten, potato pancakes, red cabbage, rice pudding, cream pies, all the desserts that Germany had to offer. I always do something different. Yes, I do. I brought seafood to the beer garden at the East Side Restaurant. East Side Restaurant, your German destination restaurant in Connecticut. Tiki-taka, hoy, hoy, hoy!